It looked like something out of a Valentine's Day commercial. Elegant, neat, and thoughtful. A box of fine chocolates, hand-picked, wrapped in smooth red paper, tied with a gold satin bow. But this wasn't a gesture of love. This was a death sentence, dressed like a sweet memory. The woman behind it all, Pamela Stanley, 63 years old, living in Parker County, Texas. She wasn't a monster in appearance. She didn't look like someone capable of murder. To the world, she was just another woman trying to get by. But beneath that quiet exterior was a storm that had been brewing for years. Pamela had once been married. Her husband, Jeffrey Kauth, had long moved on. The divorce papers were signed. The wounds should have healed. But they hadn't. Not for Pamela. She watched from a distance as he built a new life, found a new love, a new home, a future. She saw the pictures on Facebook. She read the engagement announcement. She learned that he was planning a honeymoon with the woman she now saw as a rival. It wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about humiliation. In her mind, Jeffrey had replaced her like she never mattered. And now, she told herself, it was her turn to rewrite the ending. She started with an idea, subtle, undetectable. A plan that didn't involve guns or knives or scenes of struggle, but rather a gift, a beautiful gift, one that would kill without a trace. What if she could make it look like someone else sent it? What if the chocolates arrived with a congratulatory note? Perhaps from a travel agency, a fake company promising a honeymoon experience. It would be clever, it would be elegant, and it would be final. That's when she began sketching the details. She even thought about the packaging. Nothing suspicious. Luxury wrapping, a typed note printed on glossy cardstock. The label, something generic, something believable. Sweet Escapes Travel, or Tuscan Dreams. Something that said, this is a gift, not a goodbye. Pamela imagined the scene over and over. Jeffrey opening the box with his new fiancée. Maybe their child would take a piece of chocolate too. Maybe they'd all eat from it. And then, silence. A part of her knew it was twisted, but another part, the part she fed with bitterness every day, told her it was justice. He destroyed me, she once muttered aloud, according to someone close to her. Why should he get to be happy? The box sat on her kitchen counter for days. She ran her fingers across its surface like it was a loaded gun. It was perfect, a gift, hiding something no one could see, a weapon disguised in sweetness. But as perfect as it looked on the outside, something far darker was bubbling underneath. Pamela Stanley wasn't just planning revenge. She was walking headfirst into a trap she didn't even know existed. And the first move was already in motion. Pamela Stanley was not the kind of woman you'd picture in a true crime headline. She wasn't a serial killer, a career criminal, or someone with a violent past. To most people, Pamela was just a quiet, aging woman living out her retirement in the flat landscapes of Parker County, Texas. She had once worked as a medical assistant, organized, punctual, and polite, the kind who always remembered birthdays and brought casserole to church events. But behind that calm exterior, something had changed. After her divorce from Jeffrey Kauth, Pamela's life lost its center. Her marriage had lasted over a decade, and though the divorce wasn't scandalous, it left behind a vacuum. Emotionally, socially, even financially. She lived alone. She rarely went out. Friends said she started avoiding people. Her home, once filled with framed photos and seasonal decor, grew sparse and cold. Over time, she became obsessed with Jeffrey's new life. She followed him online. She saved pictures of him and his new fiancée. She knew the names of his kids, the address of his new house, and even where they planned to honeymoon. This wasn't grief, it was surveillance. In her mind, she wasn't just left behind, she had been erased, and that anger built slowly, quietly. She started journaling in code, writing about loose ends and tying things up. She even created a fake online profile to follow Jeffrey's updates. When she talked to neighbors, which was rare, she hinted at bitterness. One neighbor would later recall, "She once said, 'People think just because you're old, you forget. But I remember everything, and I don't forgive easy.'" It was easy to miss the signs. Pamela wasn't loud, she wasn't dramatic, but that made her even more dangerous. Because when someone bottles up pain and resentment for long enough, eventually it finds a way out. And in Pamela's case, it would come in the form of a carefully wrapped gift and a lethal dose of vengeance. Pamela Stanley had always been calculated. A former accountant, she lived by numbers, patterns, and predictability. And when it came to revenge, she planned it no differently. Jeffrey's upcoming wedding was just weeks away. Pamela had carefully studied his fiancée's online posts, gathering enough detail to impersonate a travel agency rep who wanted to gift the newlyweds a honeymoon surprise. The chocolates weren't sent immediately. First, she practiced using similar boxes, checking how much fentanyl would dissolve without raising suspicion. The goal wasn't to maim, it was to kill discreetly. Pamela drove 3 towns over to avoid being recognized. There, she checked into a rundown motel off Euro 45, carrying 2 things: the poisoned chocolates and a phone loaded with burner apps to text her supposed supplier. But the person on the other end wasn't who she thought. It was an undercover DEA agent, part of a sting operation that had been watching Pamela for weeks. A local pharmacist, who had earlier refused to fill one of her prescriptions, had flagged her erratic behavior. So when Pamela texted the supplier to confirm the fentanyl drop, authorities were ready. Hidden cameras in the motel lobby recorded everything. Pamela pacing, her glancing nervously at the vending machine. The moment she handed over the decoy gift box to the agent, sealed and ribboned, with the fake honeymoon card tucked inside. The arrest was quick, clean. No one screamed. Pamela, however, looked oddly calm, almost relieved, as if the burden of hatred she carried had finally exhausted her. In the back of the police cruiser, she muttered one sentence. "He said he'd always love me. Guess he lied first." The box was sent to the lab. The contents: 2 perfectly shaped chocolate truffles, and enough fentanyl to kill both Jeffrey and his bride instantly. Justice didn't come in grand headlines, but in quiet, relentless detail, the kind that only true crime remembers. The courtroom was silent the day Pamela Stanley's trial began, but the tension in the air was deafening. The prosecution laid out the story like a twisted novel. A respected woman turned poison plotter, willing to kill for the sake of envy and revenge. They introduced the chocolate box, the so-called black box of death, and the forged travel brochure designed to mask its deadly cargo. Pamela pled not guilty. Her defense? She was set up. She claimed the meth was planted, the story exaggerated, and her intentions misunderstood. Her lawyers painted her as a lonely woman, heartbroken and manipulated by law enforcement into making foolish decisions. But the evidence said otherwise. Phone records, surveillance footage, recorded conversations where Pamela described her plan in chilling detail. She'll never see it coming. It'll look like a gift. She loves chocolate. The jury watched every clip in stunned silence. In a twist, the prosecution brought in an expert in toxicology who explained how even micrograms of fentanyl could kill. The court learned that Pamela had searched dozens of times for dosage calculations, timing, and how to bypass customs if she sent it internationally. Her web search history read like a horror manual. Then came the victim's testimony, the woman Pamela intended to kill. She stood firm, her voice shaking, but her words clear. I trusted her. I never imagined she would want me dead. She sent me postcards every Christmas. The jury deliberated only 6 hours. Pamela Stanley was found guilty on all counts, but what would come after the verdict would make headlines. Because even behind bars, Pamela would find a way to leave her final mark.